All right. Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our call today. My name is Alan Newell, and I'm joined today by Mr. Eddie Stone. Eddie's the founder and CEO of Touchstone Essentials, and Touchstone Essentials is an international company offering, organic, whole food, plant-based nutrition and detox products and hemp CBD products all over the world, shipping to over 62 countries around the world. Been in business for now over 7 years. And Eddie, I'd like to welcome you to the call and appreciate you taking time, spending some time with us today.
Hey, Alan, really appreciate the chance to be with you and your audience.
Thanks. We're here today to talk about toxins and in using a detox product, and Touchstone offers a product, Purebody and Purebody Extra, two different detox products, and it's a Clinoptilolite Zeolite product, and so I get questions all the time. People saying to me, do I need a detox? How much should I detox? And should this be something that I take? Because there's lots of different products on the market, from cleanses, a lot of harsh chemical cleanses, to detoxing. And so, Eddie, I want to talk a little bit today about why people should detox on a daily basis. And, it's toxins in today's world are in the foods we eat, in the clothes we wear, in the cars, from flame retardants to dry cleaning chemicals to airborne toxins. It's just amazing the number of toxins that we are exposed to. And so I want you to kind of touch base a little bit on that, on the amount of toxins that we're exposed to from herbicides and pesticides, and why people should consider using a daily detox.
Yeah, I'm happy to and appreciate the chance to address this, because this is a really important subject. Toxins are more or less this dirty little secret of a modern world, right? We don't necessarily hear so much about it in the same context we might with ultra-processed foods that people eat, or sedentary lifestyles, or other things that impact wellness and health and longevity, these types of issues. But toxins are really just as much of an issue, just maybe not so obvious to most of the public. And in fact, when we think about toxins, there's really sort of two ways that you see it show up. One is acute issues. And so an example, there's recently, I don't know if it was HBO, but one of these types of networks showed a series about Chernobyl, and basically demonstrating the impact of that nuclear accident on that local population and sort of those long-term health effects. And we've seen Fukushima in Japan, really same types of things there. We're talking about a radioactive poisoning and damaging to the DNA in the body. So really kind of identifiable acute issues. If you see a few years ago, there was a big train accident up in the Dakotas. Cars derailed, toxic chemicals leaked out. The entire town had to be removed from the area, right, evacuated. And so these are these acute issues. And there are individual persons that even just with daily toxic exposures have acute problems. You really could even think of asthma or seasonal allergies, or all of these are really the types of issues where a person's having a very acute reaction. Although it seems to happen so frequently these days, I don't even know if we can call it that anymore, right? Maybe now it shifts into this other category, which are systemic issues. And I've got some personal experience with it. In the late 1980s, early 90s, my mom, a beautiful, healthy, 70-year-old woman today, thank goodness, but she was really having some health issues and sort of wasting away on us for a couple of year period of time, to the point where we were growing, gravely concerned. She was growing gravely concerned because she was having all kinds of issues, really focused on autoimmune issues where her body was kind of attacking itself. And, going to Mayo Clinic and Duke and all these specialty places, nobody could identify the problem. And ultimately, through a clinic, we learned that her body was being poisoned sort of from the inside out with a autoimmune reaction. And it wasn't really until there was a chelation therapy that her health began to turn around. And so I sort of saw, really in an eye-opening way, firsthand what can happen there. And there are people probably listening to us that have family members maybe it's children that find themselves on the spectrum, or adults that find themselves on the spectrum that could be associated with toxins or other problems and processes. And so we know it can have an impact. And I think most often we tend to associate these things with either physical impacts, such as asthma, like I mentioned earlier, or neurological impact that impairs people in that way. But really, the most destructive side to this is that toxins that we're exposed to, and here I'm just talking about toxins on this sort of incessant daily basis. We living here in North Carolina, I don't tend to look outside and see or smell toxins, and probably most people, particularly if they're in North America watching this, they probably don't see or smell the toxins, but it doesn't mean that they're out there. It's not just because you go to Beijing and you see sort of that really toxic, polluted atmosphere that somebody says, oh, okay, this is it. No, it's really also the invisible part of this, and the inflammatory response that your body has to that, in the same way that oxidative stress damages your body and increases your risk for all types of degenerative disease, whether we're talking about cancer or cardiovascular disease. In the very same way oxidative stress can cause that, well, so too can oxidative stress, endocrine disruptors occurring because of heavy metals, volatile organics, and other environmental pollutants. Even when we think about glyphosate, and now the problems we're sort of learning about that. And I mean, we can even see as it plays out right in the court system where some people have had litigation they've won against those types of manufacturers. So, and here's the bottom line. No matter where you live on this globe, unless you're on some kind of bubble right at the top of the Alps, and I'm not even sure because of atmospheric toxins, that's going to do it for you. Toxins are just a part of the living condition that we face. And so even if we ignore it, it doesn't mean that it's not there, and that oxidative stress, free radical damage, endocrine disruption, the inflammatory responses that are being created by this exposure to heavy metals, environmental pollutants, that it's not a real factor affecting a person's disease risk, degenerative diseases, or even more acute problems, and impacting a person's health, not just in the moment, but even longevity, or impacting the aging process. And in this way, in a negative fashion, right? Because it really can act like an accelerator in the aging process. We've probably all seen somebody with a lifestyle that we would not associate with real healthy. And oftentimes, if you do that, like you've got someone that's a really heavy chronic smoker, we look at that and we say, well, that's an unhealthy lifestyle. That's why they look older than they should, for the age that they are, that they're sick all the time, or they're more vulnerable to cancer or whatever. Fair enough. The reality, though, is it's because they are toxic. They're poisoning themselves. That's really where that impact comes from, is all of the cadmium, lead, mercury, and other things that are coming from that smoke. And I'm not trying to beat up smokers. I'm just trying to make sure we sort of recognize how it can look acute. But even people that find themselves in heavy traffic on a daily basis, it can equate to almost like they are smoking, or they live in an industrial area with very heavy pollutants. We know that people live in and near coal-fired power plants, right, really face these kinds of issues. In our own state of North Carolina, we have all kinds of concerns with Comora, which is a chemical processing facility in the eastern part of the state, and poisoning rivers. And so toxins are everywhere, and in the same way that someone is concerned about getting an adequate amount of fresh fruits and vegetables, proper sleep, exercise, all these other things that they associate with wellness and mindful, healthy living, you really, in my opinion, you've got to think of detoxing, managing toxicity in the same way. And here's what I would point towards adults, not just for yourself, because your kids are breathing and drinking the same water and eating the same foods, and their organs aren't as fully developed. Their brains aren't as fully developed. And so this is a real issue that I believe if people want to reach that maximum point of health, right, they've got to pay attention to this, because it's out there. If somebody wants to see some more detail, they can go over to our blog. We've got a number of just tremendous articles. They can go to the community tab on the website and click on the blog, and they'll just see how heavy metals can impact, say, poor memory, the role that can play there, or talking about cardiovascular disease, the oxidative stress that it can cause and how that affects vulnerability, not just to hardening of the arteries or other factors, but over time it can impact cardiac output as well as increase people's risk for having a stroke. So it's real stuff, and it is a pervasive issue that, we probably should spend a heck of a lot more time at least making people aware and considering what they can do to sort of minimize exposure and other things they can do to improve how their body manages and deals with these toxins.
Yes. And, and it's even more and more. I know a lot of people, when you talk about the water sources, they have switched to bottled water. And then we saw just in the past few weeks where some major providers of bottled water had to recall their waters because of the contaminants that are contained in that. And so, you see a lot of, detoxing and cleansing or, top of the mind. A lot of people are talking about it. So when you talk about these cleanses that people use versus a liquid product such as the Purebody and Purebody Extra, why use Purebody or a Clinoptilolite liquid zeolite? Why Purebody versus these cleanses that people are using? How does a Purebody do what it's designed to do?
Well, looking at the two, and let me just say this briefly about cleanses, whether we're talking about herbal cleanses, which are basically herbal remedies or teas or other things that are trying to sort of nudge the body to manage toxins, those are primarily going to have an impact on the digestive system, and how effective they are in sort of impacting that digestive system. I don't know of a lot of clinical support. I do know that people that eat a lot of green leafy vegetables and other bulk vegetable and fruit material it's very effective in encouraging the body at dealing with waste, particularly waste from ultra-processed foods that make up, unfortunately, the majority of people's diet, sort of helping to manage that and kind of helping it move along through the digestive system. But when we talk about detoxing, right, separating that word from cleanse, and our work with our Purebody regular product and our Purebody Extra product, which are two natural products made from a natural zeolite, Clinoptilolite, has a number of important attributes, one of which is that it enjoys GRAS status from the FDA. And so we know that it has a long history of safety. Those are products that work on sort of the biochemistry level. So, for example, our Purebody regular product, and for those that know the products I'm talking about, the drops, right? That's a product that has a mean average size of 0.4 microns, and that's a purposeful size. Now, and to tell you just how small that is, a single white blood cell is about 25 microns in size, right? And so when you're 0.4, you're small. If you want to maybe compare it like to a human hair is about 1 micron. So if you're 0.4 microns, you're small. That's small enough that about half of that material, just the way your digestive system works, will remain in your digestive system, your tract. So it's going to go through the stomach, duodenum, into the large, and then the small intestine. And so it's going to encourage and aid the body in detoxification in the digestive system, which is important because that is sort of the body's protective place, keeping maybe foods that you've eaten that shouldn't get into the bloodstream, into the soft tissue, kind of isolating it and separating it from the body. But about half that material at that size is going to migrate out of the soft tissues through tight junctures in the walls of the lining of the gut or the intestine, migrate into the soft tissues in the bloodstream. And so it can be a very effective detoxifying solution. Basically, it's encouraging and aiding the body in the detoxification process. And it's really just quite remarkable. Our Purebody Extra takes this to a whole nother level. And in this case, we're describing that same zeolite product. So for us, we've got a proprietary process where we take our raw zeolite and prepare it so that it's more effective at detoxification. Zeolites work through ion exchange. not dissimilar to how fruits and vegetables work from an antioxidant standpoint, in that they exchange something out of themselves to rein in sort of this damaging heavy metal particle. And so in this case, through ion exchange, they're helping to neutralize and terminate the damaging chain reaction of the heavy metals inside the body. Well, we take our zeolites through the processing and we flood their cages, their pores, which are angstrom in size. And for those that are maybe some science buffs or nerds here on the call with me, you're talking about incredibly small pore sizes. We flood those cages with with calcium, magnesium, and potassium, so that they're there as a preferred exchange method for these heavy metals, environmental pollutants like the cadmium, lead, mercury, and things that I've mentioned. And so it's prepared in that way so that it maximizes its impact. And then we refine it 0.4 microns in size for Purebody. But for the Purebody Extra, we're talking about that using Malvern instrumentation. It tests out on the low end of the scale at 0.7 nanometers. And so we're talking about, just to give you what 0.7 is in terms of size range, a single atom, say a hydrogen atom, is approximately 0.1 nanometers. So we're talking about 0.7 nanometers. So we're talking about something incredibly small, and that's sort of the beginning of that range, all the way up to, say, as much as a full 1 nanometers up to 10 nanometers, with sort of an impact area right around that single nanometer mark, right? So now that's small enough, and I don't mean to bore everybody with those details, but that's small enough to make it into the cell, traveling through aquaporiners, which are water channels that exist at the cellular level. And so that detoxification occurs at the cellular level, not just that physical organ level. And so now we're talking about a total body detoxification, encouragement of that detoxification by working with these two together. It's just phenomenal, the results that people can see.
So when it's absorbed in the body, even at the cellular level, it's attracting the toxins and heavy metals. Does it attach itself, or does it remove any of the good minerals and vitamins and minerals from your body?
Well, to that last question first, there's no evidence based upon both human and animal research to suggest that it somehow impacts your level of good metals, I should say. So it just doesn't work that way, because it doesn't have an affinity for that. The reason we flood the chambers with potassium and the calcium and the magnesium is because we know that it has an affinity for it, but it's not preferred. It much prefers something with a 0.3 charge, like the cadmium, lead, and the mercury. And it works based upon proximity. So it's important that we've got a lot of particles sort of floating through the body in that fashion. And so it aids and supports this entire process. Now, the way that it works, there's really sort of three principal ways. The first one is it has pores in it. So think of it as a cage-like structure. And for those that have ever visited our website, if you're on the shop page for either the Purebody regular or the extra, we actually have an image there using a microscope. I think it's magnified close to 250,000 times, if I'm not mistaken, so that you can get a visual, get an idea of what it is. That's not theoretical. That's actually, we worked with a major university here in the United States to take that image, and they simply put the solution under the microscope and magnified it. And so there's a dark image inside the cylinder view, and that really represents the pores. Well, these pores at angstrom size, those heavy metals like cadmium, lead, mercury, and others that I've been naming, those are angstrom size particles. And so they almost fit together like puzzle pieces. And think of the zeolite has an interesting quality in that it has a negative charge. There's not very many things found in nature like this that would have a negative charge. And the good news for us is that these heavy metals have positive charges. So they're like the different pole ends of a magnet, right? The south end and the north end of a magnet, when you get them close to each other, they sort of snap together. So the first thing that occurs is it has a capacity to take into its cage these heavy metals. So that's sort of one way that this occurs. And once it does that, those metals are bound there unless it finds something, say, more severe that it's looking to take out. And so if a person has normal renal function, probably in a 4 to 6 hour period, that product or that cage full now with heavy metals is going to leave the body. But interesting enough, the way zeolites work, they almost travel in packs. Now, we know we can see this scientifically because if we test a product when it's first new, test it, say, 60, 90 days later, we can see some reconglomeration. And that's where these particles sort of get together sort of while they sit in the bottle, right? And so, but when you put it in your body, these things traveling together can actually have a sandwich effect. And so if you've got a heavy metal particle or something else of a larger size, they actually can surround it. And then the same way it took it into its cage, again, nullifies or it basically terminates the chain reaction that that heavy metal can cause. And again, normal renal function is going to exit the body. The body will not hold on to the zeolite under any circumstance. And then the final way that it works is as a theoretical process that's referred to as a Zeta effect. And what the Zeta effect simply states is that something with a charge with a thin enough layer, that charge can actually escape, right, or have an impact on the surface. And so you could think about if you had a piece of paper and you had a magnet on one side of the piece of paper and a magnet on the other side that was opposite charge, they would still be attracted to each other through the piece of paper. The piece of paper isn't going to stop that attraction from taking place. Well, when we start micronizing that zeolite down to even the 0.4 micron level of pure body, but certainly getting down to the nano range where we're talking about starting at 0.7, right, incredibly small, that Zeta effect now becomes a part of the function of the zeolite. And so almost like a snowball going down the hill gets larger by gathering things to its surface area, same type of effect. And so the bottom line is using all three of these mechanisms of action, just a really incredible particle of how it goes into the body. We think that how you prepare it really heightens that quality and that effectiveness, and why we go through the trouble that we go through to prepare the product. But it's just remarkable how this natural mineral works in the body.
You know, when you talk about using the product and it gathering that the toxins to it, the recommended dosage is 3 times a day. So, you know, some people, you know, say, well, you know, can I get by with just using 3 times the amount once a day? And so how long does the zeolite stay in the body, and why do we recommend 3 times a day?
Well, let me say this. If a person's lifestyle is such, and I say this about supplements too, if a person's lifestyle is such that the best they can offer us is to use it once a day, then so be it, right? I want them once a day is better than none a day. So that's where I start, right? Whether it's using the Purebody products, the super green juice, the wellspring, you know, kind of whatever that may be. But preferred, just like it would be preferred to have your supplement spaced throughout the day in conjunction with meals so the body's already digesting, the very same thing is true of the zeolites. The zeolites work based upon proximity. So in an ideal circumstances, you're using it 3 times, maybe 4 times a day, sort of just depending upon your lifestyle and what you're trying to accomplish. Because for most people, it's about a 4 to 6 hour period of time that it's going to stay in the body, and then you're going to urinate it out principally. I mean, it's obviously going to evacuate with your other waste or other things too. That's principally how that's going to occur. So in an ideal circumstance, again, once a day is better than none a day, but you'd prefer to have it about every 4 to 6 hours as it's in the label because it works off proximity.
Right. And then you mentioned the cleaning process. And so, you know, we use a natural zeolite product that is actually mined. And so, you know, what's the difference in a mined natural zeolite versus a synthetic chemical, 1? And then 2, once the product is clean, whether it be natural or either a synthetic chemical, I know we house our product in a amber glass bottle. And I know, you know, I've heard you say numerous times, and I read about how that protects the integrity of the bottle. And when you talk about a product that's actually attracting toxins to it, you know, there's bottles out that are not BPA free, and even, you know, BPAs are or toxic chemicals. So if you touch a little bit on the process that we use for cleansing our naturally mined zeolite, and then the differences in that and a synthetic chemical that's basically cooked up in labs.
Well, let me just say this. Given the fact that we have access to a natural mineral, right, it's hard for me to think of a justification of working with something that is synthetic. You know, the whole ethos of our company is to be as organic and natural as possible. We want to limit our carbon footprint as much as possible. I'm not even satisfied with the plastic caps we have on our glass bottles today, but it is the best option. And when you sort of weigh it out against some metal caps and begin to think about total carbon footprint and things, and so we don't have all of those things solved, but we need to take ownership, right? And so I'm not interested in putting any more synthetic out there that can possibly be. The other side of this is when we did our original research, and I worked with a really a bright man to help us with our cleaning process, most of the safety data that exists is based upon the natural mined zeolite. That's where the history of this is. And so for me, being in my position and concerns with safety and utilizing just the data that's out there, that is just simply the choice that I believe we should make, is to work with natural whenever possible. And that really is a philosophy that carries over to the glass bottles as opposed to plastic. I realize people that work with the plastics in this arena, they can continue to monitor them, to make sure they're not leaching or whatever. But you know what? We don't have to do that with glass. We already know how that occurs and those chemical reactions. So we don't have to have that as a thing we got to continually keep track of. And so, you talked about environmental pollutants at sort of the start of the call. Well, one of the things we're facing as a society right now is plastic is such an issue for us that microscopic bits of plastic are actually growing into our fruits and vegetables. And that's regardless of whether there's organic practices, because it's so microscopic, it's made it into the rain supply, just like glyphosate has, right? And so I don't want to contribute any more than we have to this whole plastic-based economy. Now, I have a deep appreciation. There's some aspects of our life that plastic is part and parcel, and it's good for society. I recognize that. But when it's not necessary, and I think I can make an argument that glass is better, then that's exactly the choice and the decision we're going to make. In terms of the natural zeolite, the natural sourcing of our zeolite is called a gold certified sourcing of zeolite. It passes Prop 65 in California. For those that don't know, Prop 65 is the most strenuous test that I'm familiar with based upon supplement and food safety. It basically says your stuff's got to be clean. And the raw zeolite, this is even before we have a chance to work with it, passes all standards associated with Prop 65. Our process from there is essentially a cleaning process and a prep process to make it more effective in the body. But just to be perfectly clear, you're talking about, even at its raw base, before we touch it, something that meets all the safety data standards we could possibly look for. That's a beginning piece to us and a reason we wouldn't want to go on the synthetic route. And so the other side is the GRAS status. We work with an aluminum silicate zeolite called Clinoptilolite, natural, very clear GRAS status. The magnesium aluminum silicates that are synthetics, I'm not sure of that. Perhaps they do have the GRAS status. I think that's a little bit open to debate. Irregardless, our decisions are when we can work with natural, we do. That's where the majority of the safety data exists. If we can possibly use a glass container, we will. We do. Why would we otherwise? And so that's the decisions we make and why we make them.
Yeah. With my, and when you talk about zeolite safety, my grandchildren, starting with my youngest, which is now 3 years old, but even when she was, 2 years old, when she would see me spray the zeolite in my mouth, of course, she wanted some too. And so I can say this with my personal experience with my grandchildren is that they use it on a regular basis. And when a year and a half ago, when all the kids were getting sick at school and missing days, they had perfect attendance. So, how safe is it for everyone and all ages, even children?
By the way, I've been enjoying seeing you and those grandkids on Facebook, enjoying that beach life, right?
Thank
And
you.
I love the ocean, but the ocean is also a place where we have some exposure to heavy metals and toxins. It's not a reason not to go in, but it's something to be conscious of. Here's to the best of my knowledge. I mean, I've got to say that, right? The universe is constantly changing and it changes pretty quickly. There are no known contraindications for zeolite, and we stay pretty aware of these things, not just on rules and regs here in the U.S., but we're constantly looking because we are shipping to Europe, we are shipping to Asia, we are shipping to the Middle East, we are shipping to Africa. So we're conscious of these factors. And so, number one, if you've got GRAS status with this natural zeolite, if you've got no known contraindications to the best of our knowledge, for healthy adults to use this product, it's a simple mineral supplement. And I believe it's completely safe. However, anybody dealing with any type of medical condition, and that includes a pregnant woman or a nursing woman or somebody that wants to give this to their kids, they need to consider speaking to their primary care physicians and just that professional network of people that help them stay informed and make considerations, just like if they're going to start a brand new supplement program and you've got medical concerns and things that you've got to think about, other medications that you're using. I encourage people that are in those vulnerable categories to speak to their physician, make them aware of what they want to do. And that's sort of our approach to it is we are measure twice, cut once, caution always, and encourage people to talk to their professional network.
Yeah. And so what are some of the benefits that we can expect by removing the toxins from our body? I know with me personally, my energy level is much better. I feel as though I sleep much better. One of the biggest things with me, though, that I noticed from taking the supplements and the detox is I always say I can kind of tell how healthy I am because of my fingernails and my hair. My fingernails grow much faster now, and my hair grows much faster. And so I've read a lot of research that talks about how, when you're healthy and the less toxins you have, these kind of things make a difference. But, what are the benefits that people see outside of the obvious of removing toxins and being healthier can we expect from using these products?
Well, first, let me just say there's so many that we can't list them all. And so I do want folks to go to the Good Inside site and click on that community tab and look at the blog because there's a lot of stuff there. And I'm kind of laughing to myself as you're talking because you're kind of hitting on some of those really hot button types of issues. And think of it this way. It's about better body performance in the same way that if you mistreat your car, right, and you never change the oil and you never change the filters and all these kinds of things, that the car doesn't run well till you get it tuned up. I look at the zeolites, the Purebody Extra as a chance to tune up the body's performance. And fundamentally, when you're getting rid of these heavy metals, volatile organics, environmental pollutants, you're getting out of the way of the immune system. And so you're freeing up the body to go do its tasks that it was built for, to deal with these disease issues that come along and sort of are a part of life. So you get out of the way of the immune system. So these immediate things that I hear people talk about first, and this is one of our most recent blogs, is brain fog. Sort of immediately, right, that fatigue that they gather, particularly the older you get, where you just can't go as hard or think as clearly or read as long and that kind of stuff as you used to. I hear people talk about, what, I'm just able to go concentrate better, just enjoy life a little more brightly, right? And so brain fog's kind of, I don't know if that's an official medical term, but everybody probably has their own way of describing that. There's a lot of people I know that once they started to use the products, found themselves going through the cough and cold and flu season without picking anything up, right? I believe that's because when you clean the body up, you live a healthier lifestyle, the immune system is going to perform as it should and more effectively. And so the cause here is that cleaning up the body causes it to perform better. And that has a lot of other impact as well. One that I hear quite frequently is people say it's easier to lose weight. People don't realize that if you're toxic, the body tends to try to manage toxicity by surrounding toxins with fat. And it can be a reason that the body holds on to fat when it's almost inexplicable based upon the amount of exercise you do or the type of diet that you eat. And so there's this whole litany of things that come about. Some are sort of a little fun and obvious with the energy level and the brain fog, but sleeping better, sort of skating through cough and cold season without an issue. But I encourage people to go and read about how heavy metal toxins affect cardiovascular disease in the detail we have on the blog, and it can make you more vulnerable to diabetes, metabolic disorders. And so it's an area people should educate themselves on because the benefits are profound.
Well, I mean, we filter our water. We filter the air in our homes with our HVAC system. We filter our oil in our cars. We filter the air that we breathe. And I mean, we're filtering everything. So it just makes logical sense to me that you want to filter the toxins out of your body because we can't catch them all. I always tell people when I'm comparing to, the air that we breathe. When you go and look at the filter on your air conditioning unit, you're supposed to change it once a month. I think the average is people average changing it once every 3 months. But when you go and look at that filter and you go, oh my gosh, how nasty that is. Well, I like to tell people, well, that's only filtering the air while your unit is running. And you're breathing that air before it reaches that filter. So just, I can just imagine, that stuff is going in my lungs and into my body. The water, my mother lived up in Virginia, and she had well water, and she thought that well water was safe. Well, her sink started turning brown and with toxins and copper. The fittings were getting nasty, and you could literally, when you turn the water on, smell the toxins and I mean, it was horrible. And so we filter everything else, and it's just logical and common sense that we want to filter the toxins from our body as well. So, Eddie, I want to thank you for joining me today. I thank you for the great information that you've shared, and I look forward to the next video that we do and sharing information with people because it's important. Health today is important for everybody, and we want to live not only a long life but a healthy life.
One body, one life, right? And so why not do everything you can?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks again for joining us. I appreciate the time and look forward to talking soon.
Thank you, Alan. Bye-bye now.
Bye.